pelvic clock. The video that you will be getting as a link is intended for audio use only. However, if you need to go as a reference to watch anything, or if for some reason the audio file that you will also get does not work, you have this file as a backup. So we begin the lesson lying on the ground. Here we see Parand. In the video you'll see that she's lying on a Feldenkrais table. This is not a massage table or soft like a bed. It's very firm and it's intended to replicate the ground. So if you want to use a yoga mat or nothing, a little something on a firm ground, a carpet, that's okay. She also has a little something underneath her head. It's a gardening pad, nothing fancy. You can fold a couple of towels. And she's laying down, starting off doing her body scan. The reason for this body scan is to figure out how does she take contact with the ground. So when I say ground, if you're watching the table, I mean the table. So for your purposes at home, you can be on the ground is the easiest. So what we're doing is we're checking to see is what parts of our body are supported from the ground, giving into gravity. So by giving into gravity, if you're using muscles to keep you up away from gravity, most probably there's something contracted or tight. Noticing how your whole body can give into the gravity and possibly have this feeling of sinking through the ground. Noticing how your back takes contact with the ground. What parts of your body have the heaviest points? Are there areas that you can sense that don't take contact? And if you find something like that, compare that same side to the other side. Maybe it's a little different or maybe it's uniform. What are your legs doing? Where do your toes point in relation to the room? On the right foot? Compare it to the left foot. How's the space underneath your knees? How do your calves take contact with the ground? A little to the inside or to the outside. Before you start thinking too much about how this would feel on your horse, let's just stay here for the moment, continuing to notice how do you take weight on your left seat bone area, your right seat bone area. How's the contact with your lower back? Is it hollow, meaning there's room for something to pass underneath, a little mouse or a baby kitten? What parts of your back take the deepest, heaviest contact? And by deepest, if you were to make yourself round, so for the moment you can imagine being on a horse with a round back, or the horse having a round back, that would be round. So what parts of your body touch the ground the most? You don't have to do it, it's just a matter of thinking. Now moving up towards your head, noticing that what parts of your neck obviously don't take contact with the ground. How does your head give in with its weight to the ground? Really letting go of neck muscles, letting go of anything in your jaw. What do your arms want to do? What's the limb length that you can sense through your right arm versus your left arm? Does one feel shorter or longer? Does one feel further up towards your ear and the shoulder area? Maybe, maybe not. And what do your legs do? Is one leg shorter? Is one leg longer? Always making sure not to try to judge or try to fix. We're just trying to take notice. One last thing, take notice of how is my breathing today? How do I feel? Maybe even give yourself a number on a scale of 1 to 10, with 10 meaning feeling totally great, and 1, not so good, where would you say you are today? We'll keep track of that to see how you are later. Now please bring your legs into a bent position, into standing position. So your feet are on the ground, very slowly, very gently, not using muscles that you don't need to. And find a comfortable spacing of your feet. You can play with it a little, getting your feet a little closer to your buttocks or not. If you want to have them a little bit more to the right or the left, all of this is up to you, whatever's comfortable. So nothing has to be perfect, nothing has to be totally symmetrical. We're just setting up for the next phase of the pelvic clock lesson, which we will begin with a couple of reference points. So we already talked about hollowing the back and rounding the back. How would it be to hollow the back a little bit more without clenching your gluteal muscles? So if you've heard another version of this from me, we talked a little bit about various markers, which we will also use today. If we talk about a bowl of soup, if the pelvis is this metaphoric bowl of soup and we tip it forward, how would that be? So tipping your pelvis forward, hollowing your back, and coming back to a starting point. So if you're doing very little, can you do a little bit more? And if you think you're doing a lot, but there's some shaking or trembling in the muscles, please just leave that alone and try to imagine it. So we have the belt buckle to think of. We can imagine sending the belt buckle forward down towards the ground between your feet, therefore arching your back, giving room for a little mouse to go underneath, and coming back down. And notice if there's something that happens in your head, maybe not yet. What are the vertebrae doing? How is it to roll the pelvis forward? Can you isolate the pelvis? Using your whole body, your spine, thinking that your pelvis goes forward and back. Trace an imaginary flashlight that's pointing out of your belly button, sending that flashlight forward down between your feet, back to the starting point, right over your belly button to the ceiling, and then the other way towards your own head. In your other version of this lesson that you've listened to, you would have first started with your tailbone. Of course, you have your sacrum, and then you have your tailbone. I mentioned thinking of a dog or a horse bringing its tail underneath its body. So we know that when a scared dog brings its tail underneath, it does clench its glutes a little and tucks its tail underneath. So when you think of this, try to do the same without clenching the glutes. So you bring your tailbone underneath you and then up towards your knees, making that round shape, trying to get another dimension of the tailbone. And then, as you bring your belly the opposite direction, how would it be to bring the tailbone back underneath you and pointing towards the middle of your back? So if any of this is too complicated, none of this is important that you have to follow all of it. The basic idea is we're rolling the pelvis forward, making a hollow of the back, spilling the soup forward, letting the belly out and hang. And then we tip the pelvis the opposite direction. And as such, the tailbone is moving in space. That's only one of the ideas to notice while doing this. And again, another one of the ideas could be following the belly out and in, thinking about the space increasing, hollowing your lower back. You can also imagine what your belt buckle is doing. And of course, while doing all of this, can we bring our attention to various places in our body? Where are our hip joints? If you're not sure exactly, that's okay. What are they doing throughout this movement? Do your knees move at all? So as you tip your pelvis forward, meaning belly button towards the ground, arching the back, big belly, do your knees want to change where they're pointing? And as you allow your back to become round, not only flat, where do your knees want to point now? Take a moment to rest. In order to do anything well, we need to be able to come at it from various angles. And this trick about noticing different pieces of it, or shining a flashlight, if you will, on one component of the same movement, will give you a whole new viewpoint to the bigger image. So we're trying to improve our self-image of our bodies. Not only will we learn to believe we can do just about anything we want with our bodies, what we want to find out is, can we have almost an X-ray vision of what's going on in our pelvis, in our back, in our tailbone, while we do a specific function. So we're practicing this now. We're also learning to not work hard while doing this movement. So hard work, effort, will take away from the learning. Doing it slowly, softly, your body is able to notice the small differences and make something of that. We also want to stay away from old patterns that kick in. Maybe we have one glute that wants to work more, or one hip that's tight. Whatever it is, we want to come away from that. So we do things very slowly, very small. It's not about doing this hard or well. And as a student, you don't have to be a good student in the old sense or everyday sense that you have to do well, you have to try hard, you have to accomplish. So I'm also teaching you to do what's good for you, what's available for you. Obviously, if you've done this type of work before and it's very easy, you can do a little bit more. But if it's a little confusing and it's hard to lay there and not have me there to help you, just do a little bit. If you drift off a little bit, don't worry. I'm keeping on the same topic for relatively a long time. So you won't miss much. Now we will continue to roll the pelvis. This time we'll initiate it by pressing with your feet into the ground. As you press with your feet into the ground, what are you able to do? Round your back a little, tip your pelvis, your bowl of soup backwards towards your head. And as you gradually release this pressure on the feet, does that then allow your pelvis to roll forward, the bowl of soup forward, and arch your back a little? So as you've seen, we can do this without the feet helping, but now we'll use the feet as part of the equation as well. In a situation of riding a young horse with shorter stirrups, or if that's just how you like to ride, or if you're jumping or a eventing rider, maybe you would do things a bit more like this. If you like to ride with very long stirrups, or perhaps you're doing a seat lesson without stirrups and your legs are just hanging, then the movement would be without the pressure through your stirrups. So try the various versions. Use different pieces. Change your attention from feet to belly button, flashlight, tailbone, breathing, and start to make connections. What about how is the pressure coming through your feet through your ankles, through the bones of your lower leg, through the knee, inserting through the femur into the hip joint, pushing the pelvis to push on the lower back, of course the tailbone, the sacrum, and one vertebrae at a time. How much can you differentiate? Can you feel the shift of the vertebrae peeling off the ground as they hollow around? So as you push, the back will round, but you will receive this pressure slowly up the spine towards the head as a wave. You may feel the sensation of your head moving away from your body, not unlike a turtle bringing its head out of its shell. And as you slowly follow this wave on your spine back and coordinate that your feet have less pressure on them and you let go of this pressure coming up your legs, you might notice that your pelvis wants to fall forward, your back wants to hollow, and track what's happening. So we're going from the bottom story up towards your head, so you can think of an elevator, and then we go back down from the top story to the basement. So your pelvis, your belly button out, and except it's not a straight line, there's a wave or curve that happens to your spine. Talking about the words arching and hollowing and rounding. So rounding again would be when the middle of your back takes more contact and everything is round. You can imagine standing and having a round back. Once again, tip your pelvis forward and back. If you're doing it slowly, do it a little faster. Forward and back, forward and back. And if you're doing it fast, or if your inclination is to try hard, do less. Rest for a moment. If you want to let your legs out, you can, or if you want to rest with a bent leg position, you can. So the name of the lesson is the pelvic clock. Imagining that your pelvis, your bowl of soup, that whole region that we've been mobilizing, is sitting right on top of a clock. And the clock has its numbers, especially 12 and 6 is what we're interested in at the moment, almost engraved into the ground, giving another dimension and deepness to your clock. Because your pelvis is like a bowl, it can roll very easily, a round bowl. We're going to roll your pelvis from the starting position, noticing where your sacrum is touching if it is on the ground. Roll your pelvis to 12 o'clock, which is in front of you, towards your feet. And rolling your pelvis forward back to the middle, and let's try 6 o'clock. We're going to keep the distance from the middle equal to 12, back, and then it's equal distance to 6. Rolling back and forth. Noticing what your breathing is doing. Can you imagine now that there's a string pulling on your belly button to bring your pelvis forward? And you let that string lower you down very slowly. So the direction of the string again is forward between your feet. You can think of a vector on the wall to give you a direction. Your flashlight is more like a laser beam, and you're pushing the laser forward, down, and out. No pun intended. So forward, down, and out, long and low. except in this situation, we're bringing the belly button, the laser forward, down, and out. So belly out, arch your back, and sense that you can put pressure into your 12 o'clock. And now rounding your back, still noticing what your laser beam is doing. Noticing if the pressure from your feet is sending you there. All of that while you move between 12 and 6. And if you're doing it very slowly, gently, because I happen to be talking at that rhythm, please go ahead and try to do it a little bit faster. Very important to mention that this is not what I'm suggesting is the correct way to do sitting trot. It is, however, one of the dimensions of the three-dimensional movements available in sitting trot through you. There are some components of 12 and 6 and the rounding and arching of your back, this wave-like movement that you've seen in the video that I have promoting this course. That is one of the dimensions. Some of you might be concerned that, well, when I do this, I'm not going to be sitting up tall, I'm not going to be having a wonderful posture. This is really not important at the moment. We're trying to mobilize, learning the way to do these lessons very slowly, gently. But now let's just imagine we're doing the sitting trot and we're having fun. So slowly move out of this slower speed into a faster speed and find yourself a working trot rhythm. You can have this 1, 2, 1, 2. And a little bit quicker. Create a spring through your feet if possible. And a little bit quicker, quicker, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. And if you're not finding the right speed, maybe you have to think medium trot. And thinking about pushing with your belly button, letting your belly out, and a quicker movement, snap, 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 and maybe springing a bit quicker, the horse moving. And yes, you'll notice that your head and your chin is moving around. That's no problem. Later you can stabilize that but still have this movement in your lower back. So allow the movement of your head for the movement. Yeah, the whole body will move. Wave-like movement. And extended trot. So there's 12 and 6, 12 and 6, 12 and 6. Now tip your knees a little bit towards the left and continue the same movement. Could this feel like a shoulder in left or a circle 10 meters left, a volte? So the different variations you'll be using, we don't want to do the whole clock for the moment. You can try a little bit to the right, whether it's 2 o'clock or 3 o'clock. So tip your knees slightly to the right. And now we're playing with this again. Rest for a moment. So we went ahead and actually explored movement while we went to 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock. Let's just play with this clock moving from 3 to 9. You can also roll your head gently if you'd like. It can go the opposite way or the same way. And a very gentle movement. For some people this aggravates lower back pain. If it does, please only imagine it. Very gently allowing your legs to tilt to the right and to the left. Very slowly. Noticing what your belly button does. Where does it point to? Does it point slightly to the right of the room and the left of the room? The same way your knees point? If you're doing the head movement, rolling, try it the other way. Meaning the head and the knees the same direction. So it's a full rolling beginning. Or, if you were doing that, try it that your head goes in the opposite direction of the knees. And of course, as we make these little adjustments, they're not corrections, they're variations. So making sure not to cause spasm into yourself because, whoops, I'm doing it wrong. Now rest for a moment. We're going to shift our attention to our feet. And how do we shift weight on our feet as we sway our legs, our knees a little bit to the left and to the right, meaning tipping the bowl of soup left and right? 3 and 9. We talked about indented numbers or engraved. 3 and 9. Go find the 3 and go find the 9. Back and forth. Like a clock, there's a middle of it, and we go a little to the right, a little to the left. How would it be to allow one knee to fall on the other, therefore becoming the passenger? So in tipping your knees to the left, the right knee falls onto the left knee, giving its weight. Back to noticing what the feet do, and inversely noticing there. You can add the head rolling again if you wish, or if you want to keep it quiet and focus on the pelvis, that's fine. Notice if you have more spine movement with or without the head moving. Is there more to keep track of? And please come to a little rest. You can have a full rest with your legs sliding out in front of you. If you've taken a full rest, you can do a scan once more to track what's changed in your body. Where do you sense your feet pointing to? Do you feel your hips a little more open? Maybe, maybe not. How's the contact with your back? And if you had your knees still bent, you can also do a similar scan. Bringing your knees back to a bent position with your feet on the ground. Let's once more play with the 12 and the 6 and see if it's a little different after exploring the 3 and the 9. Is it a little more fluid? Do your head and your pelvis talk to each other a little bit more? Meaning, is the spine more integrated in this communication? Do you have more range of movement? Is it more fluid? Is it easier? Is it softer? And do you get more without trying hard? Please bring this to resting. Let your legs slide out in front of you. And go ahead and do your scan. As you do this, I'd like to invite you to imagine that you're sitting on your favorite horse. Obviously, the leg position is different. We're now laying down, therefore, more of our body is, even than the beginning of the lesson, given into gravity. But you have now this almost image that's more clear of your whole spine, the grooves, how it curves. You're also not obsessed about it being vertical and stiff. It moves with your breathing. There's almost this residue of a 12 and a 6 with your breathing. By residue, I mean minimal 1% of the movement, or even less. It's there. Your body is not stuck in any type of position. Even though you're just laying there, the fact that you're breathing will move things around. Everything is sort of floating, your joints are floating. Back to thinking about this favorite horse, just being able to feel very open through your rib cage, tall, proud, but long and deep in the saddle, softly grounded from your lower back, flexible in the Lower lumbar, available to look to the right and to the left. Try rolling your head to feel that sensation. Available if you wanted to follow. So you could be walking, you could be trotting, you could be standing, whatever is easy for you in your mind to imagine. And your legs are long and soft. The hips are open. The belly is soft. You don't have to hold on to your breathing or trying hard in any way. And that's it for today.